I'm worried. I'm just worried. Um, I feel like we're reaching some of our darkest days in this time and age. Um, Aside from the politics, aside from everything that's going on, I think it's just really bad developments. And I posted recently about how I think that we're on a decline, a very deep decline over these next years, where we're going to see, I think, quite literally, depression level amounts of pain and despair that are just going to be widespread across the population. And I genuinely believe that to be true. I've never been more pessimistic about this time and age. Um, just given looking at the logical direction of where things are going, how government debt is just continuing to agglomerate at this unprecedentedly fast rate. And there's really no strategy, it feels like, at the top levels of society to really properly address it. Either because of lack of political will, or it's just straight up gridlock, and nobody can come to an agreement to either compromise or really do what is necessary to fix the situation. Um, I think my biggest worry, my biggest fear in this lifetime now, as it's continuing, is that I have 30 plus years life of my working life left to keep doing my job and trying to maintain insurance and the ability to obviously keep housing over my head, get those needs met. And they are met right now for the time being. But 30 years is just a painfully long time. And the trajectory of how things are going and just how much worse financially things seem to be getting, I'm scared about, well, I might lose my job, and so my insurance might just fall off because the company gets the company either just lays off because the company has to cut costs somehow, or the amount in healthcare costs that it takes just to maintain the insurance coverage. Like, the employer side is going to lose their negotiating power to keep the plan in place because insurance is gonna look at the healthcare costs and they're going to underwrite and recalculate how much they need to charge in premiums to get people covered. Because just the costs are staggering and they're truly out of control and immense. And there's nothing really meaningful being done to get a lid on that. And so these programs, they're going to go back to the negotiating table like they do every year on every new plan to say, okay, this is how many people you want insured in your coverage. These are the premiums we're going to charge you to have that coverage. And at some level, like, the insurance isn't just going to eat those costs, and it couldn't really anyway. If you actually look at how much healthcare costs, these insurance companies would never be able to stay solvent because they're just guaranteed losses. If you have 1 out of 8 people taking GLP-1 drugs, well, sure, on some level, it might be good from a medical standpoint because it may be necessary to address obesity and to try to avoid downstream consequences like diabetes, metabolic disorder, higher rates of cancer, cardiovascular disease that have their own associated costs. The medications that are still under patent, they are extremely expensive. They're so outrageously expensive. And insurance just can't eat that whole costs, even if we wanted them to. Just the math doesn't figure. You know, I'm not going to argue as like some simp for the insurance companies because that's not really how I approach that question. I'm looking at the question of, you know, if you were underwriting a particular policy and you looked at how much these medicines cost times the number of people in that pool who you're going to have to pay out to cover them all, and really sort of figure out a mathematical formula to make that at least break even to stay afloat, then it's just not sustainable. I mean, you look at companies too, like Florida and California's homeowner insurance policies, where like carriers have straight up left those states because the underwriters looked at the costs of covering their homes for like natural disasters, for hurricanes, earthquakes, fires, tornadoes. And they said, this costs so much money to us and we're guaranteed a loss on this policy that it doesn't make sense to issue it because the amount well, it's a guaranteed loss. You can't make money on a guaranteed loss, but that's really kind of the point of why it stays in business. And that's also really something that, as an insurance pool, you have to guarantee at least breaks even. And it just doesn't. It just won't sustain. The money gets drained, and there wouldn't be enough funds left to cover anybody else who had a loss that needed to be covered. It's just a fundamental solvency problem. But that aside, you know, I'm scared that the trajectory of how the costs are increasing, I really don't think I'm going to see Medicare or Social Security in my lifetime. I don't think I'll ever see those things, even though I will have paid my working life into those programs like anybody else has. And I'll get to, I guess, retirement age, which I guess we'll say is mid to late 60s. That might change later depending on exactly how we define that. But when that time comes and I go to try to claim my benefits, I don't think those programs will be there. I think Medicare will be dysfunctional and it can't keep itself open to enrollees, and it's going to have to close its doors. I think Social Security might still potentially exist. So maybe it's not entirely that I wouldn't get like a dime from that program, but I'm also pretty aware that like they would have to cut back how much they pay on those benefits. And already people complain about Social Security being inadequate to support people financially during their retirement as it is now. So cutting that in the future just makes that so much worse. But I don't think it's entirely beyond belief to expect that, well, Social Security just might really be gone because the population ages and it gets so lopsided towards this massive group of retiree age people, and only a handful, a trickle of young taxpaying workers to pay into that go as you pay system, because that's how it works. And if you can't fund them, it's just an unsustainable model in an aging population. If you can't either have more younger people to work to pay those taxes to keep the system afloat, or if you can't get immigrant workers to come because they're being discouraged from coming here, then you just won't have the revenue to make that model stay afloat. It's going to collapse. And so it's not entirely beyond disbelief that the system could just straight up not pay anything. And I'm hedging my bet on the prospect that I might never see any money from Social Security or any benefits from Medicare at the time when I really might most desperately need it, but when really all of us desperately need it, for that matter. But it's not going to be there. And I'm just terrified that we can't get our act together as Congress or just as society, government, to fix the problem. That requires some measures of austerity, tax reform, in order to make those models stay afloat. But it's just not, I don't see that happening. I don't see the system getting better. And coupled with just the decreasing democratic state of our current society, and everybody's just at each other's throats, and people are ready to throw fists at each other. And it's just constant, just pessimism everywhere. Everybody's angry or upset. And worse still, we're all angry and upset at each other. Like, we just are fighting. And we don't really feel that much sense of partnership with the people around us, or at least not all around us. But that's just the symptom of this big culture war that we've put ourselves into. And we just don't get along at all. You know, we just kind of believe the worst stuff about the other person's side without really that much nuance. It's difficult because, there's some principled ideas that really are just truly non-negotiable. Racial supremacy, stuff like that, eugenics, prejudice. Things of that nature are clearly very non-negotiable. And those have no place in a proper civil society. Absolutely not. Fascism and any sort of things like that would support totalitarian rule or authoritarian rule, that would suppress people's ability to freely associate, freely speak, freely do as they please, to come and go where they like, to do the work that they want to do, or to express themselves the way that they want to express themselves, or to be able to meaningfully participate in the political process. That is absolutely beyond the pale, just wrong. And nobody should be okay with accepting a system that advocates for suppression of any of those things. I believe that it's awful. I wish I had more to be proud of. I wish we had more to look forward to. And I wish I could just feel good about the place we are and the people we're around and the things we did, because I think we do a lot of good in a lot of ways. And I think we have things that we could be proud of that maybe we're not always proud of. And I want to feel a motivation to see the system stay afloat. I want to see Medicare and Social Security be there in the future. I want people to afford healthcare who would need healthcare. I don't want people to be crushed by just insurmountable levels of debt. And I think it would be the dumbest shit ever if the US defaulted, because even without providing for social safety net services, like a universal healthcare system or something like that, bankrupting on the basis of like, we spent too much on defense and we couldn't reform or redo the tax system to try to get ahead of the deficit and the total debt. It's just crazy. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It is the dumbest reason that would make us lose all credit and the ability to get any funding, because if we do default and we don't honor the treasuries we've issued, good luck getting anybody to loan money to the country. And if you can't get credit, that's when it really sucks. That's when it's really gonna hit badly. And you will see literal depression misery, where people will eat the things that are just in their fridge that might even be rotting because they have no other choice. They will have power outages because, well, they didn't pay their utilities, and so it's gonna have an extended period without electricity. They will not have vehicles. They'll probably get repossessed. They'll probably be moving in like 5 families into a single house, even more cramped than they are now with the current housing crisis. They're going to continue to not have kids or families because they just can't literally afford to do it. They'll penny pinch, or I guess in this case nickel pinch, because the penny's not so much a thing anymore, but they will get pathological about their money habits. Like, they'll never take on any debt. They'll insist on always paying cash. And they will just never do anything to themselves that would put them in discretionary funds territory. I remember there was this anecdote my dad would always talk about his mother, who was a product of the Great Depression era. And she always said that like spaghetti was considered a fancy meal to her. She always thought that that was sort of an extravagant expense, even though I think we can all pretty much agree that spaghetti really isn't that much of a fancy meal. But that mentality stuck with her the rest of her life. And I'm worried that might well be the personality of what a lot of us might become in the future when we start to see just how truly miserable and destitute we become as a society. And I don't think this is a uniquely American problem, because I know that a lot of other countries are grappling with really pretty severe debt crises in their own right. And so there's a lot of strain on their own social safety nets that might cause them to have holes. And there might be lapses in coverage for a lot of people in those places too. Despite their best efforts to try to maintain them, they just might not make that happen. But I am genuinely fearful of the future. I'm very scared that we might hit a time where we see 25 or 30% unemployment, where that many people are literally out of work because they've been laid off. And we see the level of kind of destitution that you saw during the Great Depression. And I'm more worried that it's inevitable. I think it's inevitable in my eyes, and I think it's inescapable, because we just don't have, there's too many stakeholders, there's too many people arguing about everything that needs to happen to get done. Everybody has diverging different interests in what they want out of the system and the government. And so there will not be enough consensus or agreement to make whatever reforms are necessary to avoid falling off that cliff. And we're gonna fall off the cliff. And that's the part that scares me, is not being able to control it and being stuck for the ride. I am very scared. And I just feel so bad, because I wanna hope that it all would stay together somehow, despite the bickering, despite all of the fighting, despite all of the just God, mess and chaos and misinformation in the age that we live in. And I'm so fed up and sick of it. I'm terribly sick of it. It's just infuriating. And I hate that we all argue, and I hate that we're all down each other's throats and just fucking arguing. It sucks. I want to feel good about the people around me, and I want to be proud to defend the system. I want to feel like I have something in common and that I share a common mission and a common goal so that we all are better off as a society, that we're all better off and we can all prosper and we can grow into our own and we can have good times and we can have children who can look forward to the future with optimism and a positive outlook on things to come, because good things happen to us and they should happen to them. We had a wonderful period of just ever greater prosperity generation to generation. And now suddenly I do think we're reaching the point where it finally stops. We stop having the next generation being better off. I think we will be the generation that's genuinely worse off. And I think not only will we be worse off, I think it's going to be catastrophically bad how much worse off we are. I think it won't be a sudden thing right away. I think the system is starting to sort of gain some inertia and speed as it's starting to roll down that hill. And so I do think in the coming years, decade, maybe 2 decades, we're going to really see that culminate. It could even be quicker than that, depending on how exactly our society does or doesn't respond to the development. But I just see what's happening as just truly frightening and very upsetting, and just, I don't know how else to feel, but I don't think I've ever felt as terrible and pessimistic about the future as I do now. I really don't have hope that it gets better, because I don't know what pathway is there. And people talk about the most extreme stuff. They talk about violence and trying to throw things around and, eat the rich and French Revolution. And it's just, the system clearly needs reform. There's a lot of problems and it needs fixing. But I also just feel like that we're not really properly engaging in this way, because the rhetoric is just over the top. But at the same time, we just are sort of passive and we don't really do anything with that rhetoric. We complain constantly about the cost of living and we're very dissatisfied and we're very angry, but nothing really ever comes of that. And I don't know if that's just from lack of volition. People just don't want the reform. They don't want to stick their necks out because that might put them at risk for some kind of peril down the road as far as their job or maybe their own physical safety. I don't really know. And I think it's such a sign of the times that we are kind of stuck in this place where it's just all bad vibes. It all feels terrible. We all feel terrible. We're all clearly struggling. We're all just trying to do the best that we can. And despite doing the best that we can, we're going to somehow just sort of trip over ourselves and we're going to flounder anyway. And I just want to have something change about that makes it better, that we start to really see eye to eye, or we do better at cooperating again. But I don't know. Cooperating just seems like these days it's the uncool thing. Or it's just, I don't know, it doesn't get the kind of social currency I think that it deserves. It sucks. It just really sucks. And this is my video to try to articulate just the deep, deep sadness and horror just watching that all unfold. And it's really slow and it's incredibly painful. And so I really hope that if anybody out there is going to watch this video sometime and give this the full 20 minutes of attention I'm giving it, I really hope and feel that if you are in a position where you're having a hard time, I hope it gets better for you. I hope you find a pathway forward, that you can get the resources you need to do the things you want or need to do, and that you can do them successfully, and you'll come out of it better and more fulfilled, happy, satisfied. I think everybody deserves that right. I think everybody deserves the chance, the opportunity to have the ability to be well established and to find success, whether that's in their career, in their family, in their schooling, in their hobbies, whatever it is that they do. I don't want to wish bad ill on anybody for just trying to do their best at whatever it is that they're trying to do. I want to see people succeed, and I want to see people do great things, because we have done great things and I have seen people come together, and I don't want to wreck that vision. I don't want to wreck that dream. I'm scared of the dream dying. I'm scared that we fail to maintain that ideal as humans, which should be rooted very deeply in the human condition, to really feel strongly a deep sense of relation, compassion, and the ability to share in the prosperity in a way that's fair, equitable, kind, thoughtful, and it's not oblivious to the hardships that some other people have to deal with. I just want to see people treat people better, and I want to treat people better, and I hope other people feel the same way too. I'm hoping that message resonates with at least somebody out there. So if you're out there and you're trying to make your own and it's hard, don't stop, keep going, just do your best, and we'll cheer you on no matter what happens. I'm going to continue to do what I do, go to my job, do the work that I do, try to do the best job that I can at my workplace, and just try to hopefully ride the storm out. Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe things do get better. Maybe we actually manage to find a way to come together to solve these challenges that define our zeitgeist. Because I think it's a terrible space to be, just wallowing the sadness and misery. So I do bid you all a wonderful good night, and please love and take care of each other.